What are you gonna make me react to?
You want to watch it right now?
Should we start with it? Okay, you want me to react in time here?
Yeah, just press pause whenever you want to.
Oh, okay. This is a new format here for us. If I was fake crying, I too would just go.
To there being an influencer, what was your reaction to that? Or do you think influencers get a bad rap?
I do. I think we do get a really bad rap. I don't think people really understand that this very much so is a business. People just assume that we're running around taking selfies and then charging people for it. Like, there's so many moving parts. We have teams, we have briefs, we have deliverables. We pitch concepts just like an advertising agency.
Oh, really?
Yes, and the editing.
Influencers are generally misunderstood. I do think that it is a hard job. If I'm being totally honest, as someone who's obviously in the space and cares deeply about influencers, I think that a lot of influencers haven't done themselves a lot of favors by constantly whining about how hard they work. Some of influencers' very reasonable pushback against people not thinking that these jobs are hard, that they're just taking a photo of themselves and making money and anyone could do it, has created a second wave of backlash because some of it sounds tone deaf in that this is the hardest job. That's I think they are very right to be I am running a business and anyone knows running a business is incredibly difficult. Not just I'm the hardest working person in the world. Because a lot of what you're doing is also fun, yeah, I can sometimes be oh my gosh, I worked a 18-hour day yesterday. Well, 6 hours of that was a client dinner at some place really nice, and then we went to drinks after. And it's yeah, that is work. Going to parties and events and flying around the world, capturing your life is work, absolutely. It's also, hopefully very enjoyable. And I think that's where sometimes people are get eye rolly is you telling me that being flown to the Caribbean and put up in a hotel for free and having to cover that is oh, this is work. And again, it is work, but it is not I think the work that the majority of people in the world do. But agree there.
It does take a long time.
And I want to say something in defense of it, because I think I came from a world where I saw this whole group of people come up. And what happens is you don't get hired as an influencer. You can call yourself one. And so there's a myriad of people who are out there calling themselves influencers.
Right.
And they are not. And so I think
some
it muddies the waters. And people who are actually professional and do this for a living, are clearly successful and have a real business, they get lumped in with somebody who actually is not an influencer at all.
Jenna's saying there's a lot of people that call themselves influencers and aren't influencers. We talk all the time about audience versus influence, right? And even having a following doesn't necessarily make you an influencer. That you have to have influence over people, which means you have to be persuasive or knowledgeable or entertaining or something that makes people listen to you. I don't think anyone should ever say yes to reality television. You don't exist to impress people with your talents. It is not a venue for you to share your gifts with the world. It exists to make other people feel good about themselves by making you look like a fucking monster or an idiot or an asshole or vapid or anything other than a inspiring, exciting, good person. On social, you have control over how you are perceived, what you share, what you don't share, what you want people to think about you. Go on reality TV, you lose that, right? I mean, get outside of social and increasingly you lose that, right? Just in your interactions with, your coworkers, your family, your friends, even your partner, right? That they may not perceive you exactly how you wish to be perceived. So social, gives you a level of control because you control what people see and what they don't see. It's not dissimilar from the shift that is happening with brands and that they are losing control of the narrative, right? They can no longer say, the only thing I want people to say about Coca-Cola is that it's about joy and Santa Claus and family. When you think about Coke, you think about the best moments in your life, and that's what we're going to associate Coca-Cola with. Well, now Coca-Cola is full of sugar. It's bad for you. There are enormous plastic polluters. Whatever the story is about Coca-Cola, it's not fucking Santa Claus anymore. You know, they've lost that ability to control the narrative, which is, you know, why it's so important for brands to work with influencers, because they can use those influential voices to help shape the narrative, to seed the stories in social that they want told. You know, increasingly, I think what is really scary for brands is that advertising as a form of like mass propaganda is like quickly disappearing, right? That you can no longer just like blatantly lie. You know, you can't just like hand a cheeseburger to Michael Jordan and be like, well, everyone loves Michael Jordan, and so everybody will love McDonald's. I think that that's going to make it really difficult for a lot of household big brands to survive the next 2 decades. You know, to be a brand that people feel proud to be a customer of, who has, you know, a product that is clearly superior. You know, I've been really inspired by beauty. Obviously, no industry leans on influencers as much as beauty. It's super important to work with the right influencers, and to, you know, marketing is incredibly important, but ultimately it is about great product. You know, the brands that are killing it at Sephora are doing so because they have products that beauty fanatics really are like, these are the best products. I think that that's really inspiring. We had an event here recently, and the founder of Tower 28 was in the office, and that brand's on fucking fire. She is not your typical founder that you'd see right now. You know, she's not a 24-year-old wonder kid. She's not a internationally famous pop star. She came from the beauty space, who had struggled with eczema, who wanted to create a line of beauty products that were deemed to be like safe for people suffering from eczema. Through that, created these like very clean, very safe, very gentle products that are like people are loving. If beauty is the industry that most embraces influencers, and that is what it's done to the beauty industry, and that moves through other industries, I think we will see the same things happening. You know, that big marketing budgets are not going to be enough to ensure that your brand is successful, that ultimately you have to make good product. And I think, you know, for decades that was not the case, especially in America, especially with like more consumer packaged goods, stuff you would buy in a grocery store or a drugstore. Great marketing cannot save a shitty product. In the past, without the internet and without all of this, like, distribution was so important. People are driven a lot by convenience, and so like having your product in Walmart, in Target, was so important because people trusted Macy's, and then they went to the beauty counter at Macy's and they just bought something, right? They didn't have any way to get unbiased opinions about what beauty products they should use. They could open Vogue, which suggested the beauty products that bought ads with Vogue. Certainly also, like, when they opened Vogue, it would just be talking about white women's skin. Other industries, if you look at music 30 years ago, radio controlled what got popular. The record labels could call on the people that owned the radio stations and say, I want you to make this person happen. It's like, okay, we can make this person famous. They don't have to have talent. Where else would you find music? There was no discovery engine for that because it was all controlled by a small number of like centralized corporations. Early 2000s, the internet comes along, and all of a sudden there's these music blogs, and like you're finding music that's like you've never fucking heard of, that would never play on the radio, right? And now the radio stations don't have power. The record labels don't really have a lot of power anymore. They're actually just looking and saying like, we're gonna find out what people are connecting with and try and like grab it and scoop people up that we think are connecting with this community in a interesting way. That's what makes influencers as a whole like so important, is that no brand can spend enough money anymore to like make themselves, to ensure success. If the product isn't good, you know, the TikTok generation is just like gonna sniff that out and they're just like not gonna put up with it. But again, it continues to place influencers at the center because people will still want to know what is good. Well, that's a good example, right? Like, I have recently started drinking martinis, thank you. I'm not gonna try 20 different gins and figure out which one I like best and keep fucking notes because I'm not like a dork. So I just like messaged this guy who was the bartender at the Four Seasons down in Surfside for years. He won best bartender in the world a couple of times. And I'm like, what gin do you use in a martini? And he's like, Sapphire. And I was like, sick. Boom, job done. I trust this person, right?
Do you think it was like a cheeky gambit that Bravo took with even casting Sai?
Well, I mean, look at Bravo. I mean, all of those women had a following. I don't think any of them didn't have any following. And so much of what drives the success of Bravo programming is people talking about it on the internet. The most successful season that they have had of TV, the Scandival, what is that show, Vanderpump? And that was driven all by people on TikTok and Twitter and Instagram talking about it and getting people into the show that are online, that like endemically operate in these platforms makes a lot of sense since like that's the community that you need to tap into. I mean, I think it's encouraging in just like what people want to emulate, which like, you know, a group of women that are like super successful and badass and like sharing their lives on the internet and doing their own thing. And, you know, I like that the husbands are like, or boyfriends are like little accessories, you know. They're like arm candy. You know, while I don't watch reality television, I prefer reading Dostoevsky personally. But teach their own, you know, no judgment. I don't know what the hell this show is about, but I feel like I said some really intelligent things that you should listen to. If you agree, come back next week.
I want to introduce a new segment called Devil's Advocate.
Yep. Yep.
There's a sub-story in the Real Housewives of New York about one of the husbands' habit.
I've heard about this only because of social, yes.
Yes, he goes to Thailand and back for the points. Devil's Advocate, you've done this. Why would one do this?
I did see a video about this somehow, and I watched it. A mileage run I have done where you're trying to get status and you just have to like fly somewhere. I took my wife to Ireland one year because I needed like another, 4,000 miles to hit platinum on Delta or something. And so you just fly. Some people just like never leave the airport. They just will go like New York to Dallas to Miami to Seattle to New York and just be like, that's gonna be my day. They'll just find a flight that does that for $500 but gives them 6,000 miles or something, and then they hit their status. It's a subculture, but it's a thing that, like, look, you get to the point where you're like last year I was $1,400 of spend away from Diamond on Delta. I was considering just like buying a first class flight to like Boston and just like going to and from Boston. Ultimately, I'm incredibly cheap, and I was like, I'm not fucking spending $1,400. And let me tell you, I regret it every single time I fly, and I don't have Diamond. So shame on me. I should have done the mileage run.